Welcome back, everybody. Picked up a couple of regular OSE folks for this session. So this is our last of our kind of subject-oriented theology sessions. The next one with Rabbi Daria is going to be more oriented towards synthesizing and beginning to articulate your own theologies, not as a definitive statement. That's there. And so today is a little different because this is really something that is very dear to my own heart. And it's really not talking about a theology. It's really a theology that I inhabit myself. And kind of this is very much my own this theology of calling it Neo-Hasidism. I guess I'm going to pass out the sheets here. For those of you who are online, you can access the source sheet through the calendar link for tonight. You should see it there. Jewish Theologies, Neo-Hasidism. And also for those of you online, at a certain point, a couple times you'll need a Reconstructionist Sidur, which is not there on tonight's calendar link, but you can access it through any of the Friday or Saturday services. So, yeah, so we're talking about Neo-Hasidic sort of theology, which really just means a kind of adapted form of Hasidism, which I'll say like tiny bit about in a few moments, but adapted for people who don't want to, or don't live in a Hasidic, traditional Hasidic community. And I so Hasidism, I guess, to say just the tiniest bit about this is the Jewish revival, Jewish kind of mystical revival movement that began in the mid-1700s in Eastern Europe, centered around the figure of the Baal Shem Tov, that probably heard of, and then his students spread Hasidism kind of far and wide in Eastern Europe. And you had like Chabad, which everyone knows Chabad is a Hasidic movement that came out of the third generation of Hasidism. It took this kind of outreach direction, which was very unusual, it was about 75 years ago. And Hasidism was characterized by really a passion for Jewish spirituality, for finding ways to speak about the divine and connect people to the divine, and by certainly the early 20th century, I think more than half of Eastern Europe, maybe more, was Hasidic. And Neo-Hasidism is kind of, it started with the figures of, particularly with Martin Buber, a lot of us have heard of, but another guy who's less well known in Poland named Hillel Zeitlin, but then kind of came to the US through Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi and Shlomo Carlebach. They were actually the first emissaries that the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent out when Chabad, just from the very beginning of Chabad becoming an outreach organization. And but it's Hasidism has had a profound impact on all elements of Jewish life. Reconstructionism very much included, and so Neo-Hasidism, you could say, like regular Hasidism, is more of a, it's really about cultivating spiritual awareness and inner awareness. There's a focus on one of the favorite words is what's called dveikut in Hebrew, which means cleaving or deeply connecting. It's kind of the word for glue in modern Hebrew is devin. So it means like deeply cleaving, connecting to God. And we're gonna spend, and what they mean by God is not so conventional to what people often mean by God. And we're gonna spend our time today exploring that from a couple different angles. But it's a kind of devotional cultivation. It's, Hasidism as a movement was in its beginnings and became even more so very traditional in terms of its practice. It actually, in like the 1800s, with the rise of modernity and Reform Judaism and conservative Judaism and stuff, Hasidism then became kind of like a major bulwark against like rigidly opposing modern adaptation. But Neo-Hasidism has more traditional halachic folks and less traditional, less halachic folks, but all people who are attracted to I think a really profound, insightful Jewish spiritual language that is deeply rooted in Jewish texts and traditions, but is quite different from rabbinic Judaism and biblical Judaism, our earlier layers of the cake. And well, and it has certain overlaps with Reconstructionism and some different orientations as well. This is when I say like I live with this, this is what really reconnected me to this, kind of lit a fire under me in my early mid-20s when I discovered Neo-Hasidic teachers, essentially, people who were not in the, I didn't go to Borough Park or Crown Heights or B'nai B'rak or something like that. Like I went to other, egalitarian places, and that was where I was first really exposed to this, both people teaching and living it. And it's changed my life in really dramatic ways. So it's exciting. It's exciting for me to share this. Some of what Brian, I felt a little bad for you. Some of what I'm sharing today will be a little bit of review for you from like when I taught the Chayut class a couple years ago. We're going to start with some of that because I feel like it's so foundational. But review is fine. But review is good, and then we'll go on. So if I won't be offended if you do fall asleep, but hopefully I'm sure you. And so one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov really both emphasized in his speaking, but even more powerfully, it seems like, in his being was, in like traditional theological language, the omnipresence of divinity, meaning that God is right here right now, not in some faraway seventh heaven or beyond, but is always present. And that is really what we're gonna see some like different takes on how to talk about that, give language to that. We're gonna do one song that's a kind of popularization of that. That's really the goal, to have that deep connection with the divine presence. From That's what Deveku did, from moment to moment. You lose it, you reconnect. It's a whole dialectical process, but that's kind of, in a way, in a nutshell, what Hasidism and Neo-Hasidism is about. I may not. I'll probably just use one word or the other. Like they're largely, for our purposes, pretty interchangeable. But even like the Torah is then reread. We don't have time to get into how they do this today. But the Torah, when you read it with Hasidic eyes, is really read as this kind of manual of how do you do your spiritual practice? How do you connect with God? Like, how does that work? Um, what does that look like? And so that's kind of where we're going. And I do, and I want you to, as we start getting into stuff, feel free to interrupt me, because I want this to be like real and kind of based on real things that you're wondering or wanting to clarify, or or whatever. And for those of you on Zoom, if you want to, I don't really, it's hard for me I can't really track the screen in front of me and the people. So you have to kind of unmute if you're on Zoom and just say, hey, can I want to ask a question or something, and that's fine. So so let's look at our first text. Any like questions just from that tiny bit of introduction, or burning questions introduction, or if you're ready to just jump into some of the teachings here.
I'll say this is surprising to me because when I have these stereotypes of Hasidism as, not very, not very egalitarian, to say the least.
It's not.
And
Yeah.
and I thought very rigid, although I will say
It is.
only since like maybe since COVID even, I've seen such outreach in Howard County by Chabad organizations just across so many areas, daycares and, family activities and things like that. And so what you're saying is just giving me a different perspective, that it's not so dominated just by that cultural stereotype that I thought about.
Well, Hasidism is, Neo-Hasidism is not.
Okay.
I mean, Neo-Hasidism has infused all areas, all denominations, all
Yeah, I
areas
wouldn't have known.
of Jewish life. Well, I mean, the book we were just talking about, right, is written, your Siddur, your weekday Siddur is written by the paramount exemplar of Neo-Hasidism in the United States.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, because a lot of people have very negative views of it, so I'm trying to be,
yeah, well, that's
I'm
kind of,
open.
well, and that's why I'm making kind of the distinction between Neo-Hasidism and Hasidism.
Yeah.
But is mysticism kind of the same for Hasidism and Neo? I mean, that sort of.
Yeah, because Hasidism is basically a popularization of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalah.
Okay.
And in many cases, it's a kind of simplification of Kabbalah. Still, in ways, for most of us who are not schooled and working with rabbinic texts and language and didn't go to yeshiva, won't feel simple at all. But compared with much more complex forms of Kabbalistic theology and how and maps of divinity and so forth. It is in many cases a simplification, and in many ways it's a kind of psychologization of Kabbalah. Instead of it being about like God beyond us, Hasidic readings will often take it much more internally or psychologically. And Chabad is a very unique animal. Like there's all kinds of other expressions of Hasidism. I mean, there's in contemporary, like ultra Orthodox Hasidism, even though Chabad is very different in its approach in terms of doing its outreach thing. And
So is Chabad more like the Neohasidic?
no,
No?
no, Chabad is still a completely ultra Orthodox, highly ultra Orthodox, literalist, I mean, movement.
Okay.
It's like totally, but they just do outreach, and they're very warm and accepting, and like they're happy to have you. Yeah, it's their whole the Chabad, and it's hard to like Chabad in the 1950s just dramatically transformed from a it was a very rich meditative study, deep spiritual study oriented expression of Hasidism.
So
And it still is, but a lot of Chabad people have much more, instead of really doing a lot of that inner work that was what Chabad was about for the first 150 years or so, it's become much more about like reaching people and kind of bringing people back to traditional expressions of Judaism, so forth. But so let's look at our first text. So this is from a teacher named Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, also known as the Meori Naim. So this is text number 1, right? Could you actually pass me the, or I can, right? Now.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say, like, right, I had the first quote that I brought from Reb Zalman, that in a way maybe should have I maybe should have said this at the beginning of our theology study, but this is, so I don't know if Reb Zalman got this from someone or if this is his own idea, but he said theology is the afterthought of experience, which I understand to mean it's about, like, it's not about first, clarifying things mentally in your mind through X, Y, or Z, Jewish or other theological system. It's first having, or the most important thing really is having spiritual experiences and then finding ways to give them language. And I think that we've all, we all have life experience and all have different kinds of spiritual experiences, from maybe more everyday or subtle to maybe bigger things like that. And so this is like one way that that meets really powerfully with a lot of my own experience, I think I would say, or at least enough of it that I feel like it's on kind of the right track. So so this teacher was from he kind of straddled the first and second generation. He knew the Baal Shem Tov a little bit, but also the second generation of Hasidism. It's not really so important. We're not really focusing on the personalities of the figures today, but so maybe would someone read our first text? I think the Hebrews, hopefully the transliterations hopefully can figure it out, or I'll help you. Yeah, Bella.
The Holy One is called the light of all life.
Hey, hey, Hakan.
And for any creature in the world, whether birds, animals, or humans, or anything else, their chayut is the Blessed Holy One,
Is the blessed one. Yeah.
is the Blessed Holy One. That one is the chayut of all life. A person should investigate, am I not alive? And who is this chayut of mine? Is it not the Blessed Creator?
Thank you. And so chayut is this word that we're gonna be using a bunch today. And I didn't really translate it here. There's multiple ways you can, it comes from the word for aliveness. That's basically what it means, aliveness. But it's sort of, but you could say vitality, divine vitality, life force, life energy. It's probably the closest word we have in Hebrew to chi. To chi in Chinese, in the Chinese medical and spiritual, Taoist and so forth systems, like they talk about chi a lot. And in Indian system, or if you've been to yoga classes, you might have heard the word prana. It's the same word. And so it's this divine vitality that is flowing through everything to give it life. We'll see a little more of our third text is kind of a little more specific theological language about that.
I think.
Yeah.
So, in Hebrew, everything has that root word, so just to associate for people that don't know, the chai is the origin. Chai meaning life.
Hi, L'chaim, yes,
People did not make that connection.
yes.
None of that.
I meant to say that if I didn't say that clearly, thank you. Yes, that's. So life, or life, the ut ending is like ness, or sort of, so lifeness, or alive, you can't say lifeness isn't really a word, but aliveness is a word. And so in the Jewish mystical model that Hasidism is working with, this aliveness is flowing into all things, not just living things as well, like everything is being enlivened. Maybe we will I think I will just have us read in a moment let's actually read, if someone could read the third text. Yeah, this is kind of a little instead of me like explaining it, this is kind of dropping you more directly into the language itself. And this actually is a Chabad text. This text number 3. This is from the Tanya, which is kind of the core text of. Were you volunteering to read, or yeah? Which is, so this is like the kind of core text of Chabad, its most important text, and this kind of gives you a little further expansion of what we just read. So Shelley, yeah.
The reason that every created thing appears to us as a self-existing entity is because our physical eyes do not see the power of the Holy One and the breath of its mouth that is in everything, enlivening it. But if our eyes were allowed to see and comprehend the chayut and the spiritual energy, ruchaniyut, that is
Ruchaniyut, yeah.
Ruchaniyut, that is flowing into each created thing from the divine mouth and breath, the physicality and substantiality of the creation would not be apparent at all to one's eyes.
Anyone want to take a stab at somehow putting that into their own words or say what you're, what it seems to be saying or what you're getting from that.
I think you have to sing that song in number two to
What,
express that.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
I would say that
I think
again.
you have to sing a song in number two to express.
We
it.
have to sing it, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good, maybe we should just,
I think should we?
yeah, maybe we should just sing the song first. All right, well,
Well, is it like, I mean, that it's like so profound that even if you could see it, you couldn't? Is that basically what it's saying, like it's unseeable, like?
well, it's as though like if way I read it is like if we could see flows of energy, like if we right, if we're all, each of us, everything is made up of energy. In this system, there really isn't matter. It's all like, it's kind of like the Matrix. Everyone seen the Matrix? Anyone? It's all kind of ones and zeros. It's all kind, which are the divine, which is the divine energy, which is understood as like the divine speech, which we'll talk about more, because it says in Genesis that God spoke, and by God spoke and there was light and so forth, and so the creative power essentially is metaphorized as speech. And so we can't really see that. We wouldn't see that if we wouldn't see this like bounded physical, our nervous systems and brains and so forth see these kind of like fixed bounded things. We don't see the alive, vital energy that is causing it to continue to exist.
and keywords in the song are who, what, and how. So it's not something you can touch or feel. It's, physically, it's more, like you said, an energy, a mental.
Yeah, well, or it's not, it's not, if you can't put your finger on it in the way of like a book, but we're gonna play around a little bit with that, I think that there are ways that aliveness is experienceable.
Is it like an
Um,
aura?
What?
Is it like an aura?
Well, an aura is just is like, for people who can see them, it's just part of someone's energy body. It's just another, like, but the whole, like, it's all just different layers of energy, like, from it's all energy, but that's a particular kind of subtle energy, basically. So aura is kind of one subset of this whole kind of flow of chayut through existence.
So it's part of the aliveness.
The aliveness, yeah, it's kind of a subset of that, of the aliveness. If someone was able to, for those people who have a sense of that, it's not something most people in our culture see. Yeah, let's sing the song though. So thank you. Because it's great to, because the singing itself is a kind of a spiritual practice. And
Assuming that this is all energy,
what?
this is all energy,
Yeah,
cute, which is an energy. And, I don't know, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, I'm just saying that, obviously connection is with, aligning yourself with the energy, which song, meditation, many ways of doing it. And you taught us one in another time, the practice of qigong, I believe it was, which is about aligning yourself with the energy of life, qi.
Yeah,
And
Hiyut or Hayut and Hiyut are the same word.
But
They're-
yeah, but I mean, like, one of the ways we did that was with a grove of trees.
Yeah,
And trying to experience the energy of the trees, particularly if you can find a circle of trees. And see if you can align yourself with some of the energy paths or whatever, and. The other thing, and for some reason, I always come back to beekeeping.
oh, okay,
Bees have lines of flight. And if you look at a hive and don't interrupt those lines of flight, in other words, put yourself in their energy paths, don't do that. You could walk right up to the hive and literally bees will land them.
Mhm.
And what we kind of like, but I mean, it's like, this energy is ever present and now. And, you know, this thing, who is this aliveness that I am? That's a very profound statement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
the thing is that the connection of the fact that, you know, we use communication to talk. But, you know, I'm interacting with another alive being. And these connections are, well, they're a lot more mystical than we think.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, there's, yeah, absolutely, I mean, there, within, you know. The whole, there's all kinds of different flows and subtleties of this. Of this energy and different creatures and interspecies.
Well,
possibility connections and so forth, and you know.
that's why the Nigun at the beginning of the service, it's a way of connecting, it's a way of that singing, and in the Bavature of the Chabad, they begin with senseless words, singing, yeah, 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 or whatever, and you move from that into prayer.
Yeah, 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 you're kind of getting us into, you know, other
I don't want to-
modes of spiritual practice and ways of kind of. Because, you know, of like getting past the thinking mind, right? And which is a little different. It's related, but it's a little different. But let's just try and stay in this entry point of the aliveness, you know, of the aliveness of existence. So yeah, let's sing. So probably not many of you know this tune. I don't really do it that much at Osted. But as you get to know it, please join in and sing. We'll probably just do it through a couple times like twice for the sake of time. But for the Hebrew readers, I threw in the non-vocalized Hebrew there. So if you're like, for the more advanced people, you could see, because you have the transliteration as well, but you can try your hand. I think it's just going to take you into the mind too much, but you know, you can see what it's like to read Hebrew without vowels. But actually, let's see. I am and I am and I am and I am. I am and I am and I am and I am. I am and I am and I am and I am. And who is this aliveness I am? And what is this aliveness I am? And how is this aliveness I am? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? I know that I know that I know I unbeat. I know that I know that I know I unbeat. I know that I know that I know I unbeat. Unbeat. He who I usually be. Who I usually be. Who I usually alone. Nabore alone. I and who is this aliveness I am? And what is this aliveness I am? And how is this aliveness I am? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? I go high. I go high. I go high. Wow, I should be. Wow, I usually be. Wow, I usually alone. I'm already alone. Before we jump back into learning and discussion, I just kind of want to take the energy of that, and if willing to just for it's not going to be a long thing, it's just a couple minute guided little mini exploration meditation that if you'll humor me and just kind of go along with this, to just I invite you to close your eyes and just first see if you notice aliveness anywhere in your body. And that could feel like tingling, like warmth, like um, aliveness. Just probably other things as well. And you can just invite you to kind of breathe into the lower belly. Just let the breath kind of descend and kind of like expand your belly like a beach ball a little bit. Just feel, the kind of aliveness of the breath, the subtle feelings of that. And certainly if we had more time or another session, we would maybe do some of the Qigong practice that Brian was alluding to. But a kind of a mini, a tiny bit of Qigong of sorts is to just bring your attention now into your hands. A lot of times you can feel energy more easily. For many people, it's easier to feel that kind of aliveness energy in the hands than other places of the body. And just feel into the fingers. Feel into the palm of the hand. Just be very subtle, just like very subtle tingling. Let me just take another moment to just feel the body as a whole. So this is kind of one Hasidic answer of sorts, or it's, to the question of where is God? Divinity is found in the course, the aliveness that is coursing through each of our bodies, keeping us alive from moment to moment, keeping us in existence. And for me and for many other, you can open your eyes now, me and many other people, the connecting with this is is nourishing and a joy, and it's like for me, kind of, this is like a baseline level of that prompts prayer, like, thank you, God, for keeping me in existence, not just as an abstract, like I know I'm alive kind of thing, but like from the direct feeling of like my own aliveness, and that this is something that is always with us, that we can, that I offer as kind of like a practical connection, as we start to think about, in the Adult B'nai Mitzvah class, we'll talk more about specific prayers and stuff in the fall, but like as a general orientation for prayer, that this connecting with our own aliveness can really prompt gratitude, can just, it's that subtle feeling of being is not something to take for granted, and is really a wondrous thing. There's a lot of subtlety to it, as you could imagine, like, through something like qigong, or but the body is, just the subtle feelings of the body is a great place to start with that. So and then the next thing I would, before we come back to like further discussion, is I invite you to turn to a neighbor, or no, we're not quite, I guess maybe it would be one group of three, and to say like a time when I felt vital energy, aliveness, life force palpably in my body was X. Yeah, so I don't think I'm gonna put the singles into breakout groups just for the sake of, so you can just, if you're just by yourself, just you can think about that. So just take a few just take, don't do a whole long thing, like, maybe when you're skiing or hiking or, it could be anything, like when your body really felt alive.
Lived over a car.
Yeah, I want to see walk.
She looked straight at me and said, "Look right in front of me, if you're right, especially if you're in the car." When I stood up, that was the most alive.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
there was a.
That's I felt in the most. Now, who's some is
Good.
She's just in the very
Birds.
That's. I feel very connected.
I remember.
It's probably one chance. I did so much to gas. Was then it's yes, no, there's this pieces of like
Oh, God.
oh my God. Well, I got my son did some cool thing, yeah. So they, oh, no, we talk about it. Yeah, that's.
And I hope that those who are in group couples on Zoom did do the exercise, but I have a couple of
Well,
pairs that are on Zoom.
So that was a revelation.
So try to come on back if you're in the room, or just, did everyone get a chance to share just a little something on this?
Oh, yeah, that's the seventies.
so you kind of knew what to expect.
I knew, I didn't know for too. So, I never watched it. Yeah. So now I have to know. So I have to do it. And it's. But it was like this revelation.
Okay, kids, come on back.
We're back.
Okay.
Come on back. And
We consider you
yes.
happy birthday.
Can we hear a couple of the things that people, not everyone, we don't, but if there were just like a couple of examples, Bella, yes.
Giving birth.
Giving birth, felt. That's often
Most of that.
a pretty intense, was it aliveness, does that capture it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, cause like for Rabbi Daria, it's like, it's a very intense form of living. For her, it was like, get the hell out of the way, kind of like her,
There's that too.
yeah.
But there's nothing like, giving life to feel life.
Yeah, yeah,
Feel connected to like
Yeah.
every other mammal on the planet,
Yeah.
which is how I felt when I was in diaper.
uh-huh,
Like I'm connected to every mother that came before me and every mother that's out there now, yeah.
I got my son's umbilical cord. My husband's passed out on the floor. It was his job, but I did it.
other maybe perhaps less dramatic experiences of aliveness.
I used to do a 30-mile one-day hike. That's what.
That 30 miles still falls under the dramatic category, but
back to it.
but that's a good, but okay, a hike, that was 30
Yeah,
miles,
One
whoa,
day,
Wow.
hike.
Good one.
okay.
Yeah.
Good one.
And mine was,
It's over.
I saw fireworks last Saturday night and it just astonished me. I don't know why. It was very dark. These fireworks were magnificent and it just completely caught me off guard. And I was just really emotionally like taken with the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Relating to you, Brian, anytime you're invited, we captured a swarm of bees last weekend
Oh.
and transferred them into a hive. That was nuts.
Did you do it by?
We were suited up, but you can still feel the bees through the gloves
Oh, yeah.
and you can feel that vibration.
Oh, yeah.
Hundreds of bees
Oh
out.
my God.
But so I wanna,
So,
I mean, you're not necessarily naming that, but I would think that that's
Yeah.
kind of sometimes, and that's part of how many of us connect, maybe we don't necessarily language it in this way, to the natural world. That we
Yeah.
feel the pulsating aliveness, and you, like with
Yeah.
bees, it's like kind of off the charts,
that-
right? It's very
It was pretty
literal.
awesome.
But you know, sometimes when we're in a really vibrant, lush place, right? It's kind of like, you know, there's a intensity to that life, or with other creatures, right? Sometimes we can feel or be awed. I mean, this right, we can be awed by the, you know, the power, the aliveness of another animal, and then that, you know, brings awe in. But so I mean, I guess, you know, well, anyone on Zoom want to throw in an experience at all of aliveness that that came to mind, or that you noted with your partner, Julia? Yeah.
A 10-mile run or a half marathon along the same lines as the 30-mile hike. I mean, it's just a real expenditure of energy, but you really feel high afterwards. Yeah.
I mean, like a 30-minute run, like, I mean, for those of you who are not like going to do ultra marathons or stuff, like, but exercise is totally, I think, like a way we can kind of feel that, like, aliveness coursing through our body. That so you know, it's always there in a more subtle way, but that's kind of like amping it up a little bit more. It's a little more gross so that we can actually feel it. And this is also why Rabbi Dari and I really encourage people to sing fully, right? Because when we sing fully and really let the breath in, and like really open our uh mouths in song, I find, and many other folks I know find, that we can feel that kind, we feel more alive than when we first walked in. And then, you know, and we have these other, you know, these different prayers that are then saying like all life is praising, and you kind of feel like, oh wow, my aliveness is like woken up in a way that it was a little more sleepy before I came in, and it's now like aroused, you know, really. And this is also, you know, error, the whole juiciness and, like, you know, of the dance of eros in the world, not just like sexual, but the whole, you know, that's part of this whole, the dance of, I mean, this is another way of languaging the dance of life. And but this is how the Hasidim like language the dance of life. And so, you know, Brian, just connecting back to this sort of spiritual practice piece of it, is partly why like Hasidism was very characterized by more intense, very enthusiastic prayer, because you know, you feel that like uptick in, you know, when everyone's into it and everyone's, you know, singing loudly, and you feel that kind of like spiritual uptick in aliveness, in presence, in group. You know, it's a kind of increase arousal in the group energy, right? And and that's something that was, you know, really has been really valued. But we get that here at OSE at different times. I mean, it's not every time, but we've definitely, I mean, you know, just on regular Friday nights when we get a good full crowd, right? You can yeah, so um all of this is kind of just offered as a way of giving Jewish language to this. And I think I think this is worthwhile because it kind of makes the Reconstructionism connection. When in Reconstructionism, in our prayer book, do we most explicitly invoke this, or use this kind of language of aliveness, or something? It's not quite exact, it's not chayut, but it's from that same life, chayim root. And it's actually specific to Reconstructionism.
I was gonna say the Shema, because that's when I feel it the most, but probably.
Well, I mean, but that's great though, I mean, and that is, and, but I'm pointing more to the language of the prayer itself, like where the Shema doesn't say anything about.
Right, no,
Right,
yeah.
but it would make sense why, well, do you wanna say why you feel, why don't you say why you, what that, how would you
Well, I-
describe, or how, what made
Yeah,
you say that?
I mean, I think it's because everybody's singing together and it's this very slow,
Mhm.
almost like a drone. It's almost like a meditative
Yeah,
kind of, yeah, I think because it does, it feels like money padme up, like it feels.
all right, it's right, organization, you know, there's a kind of collective
Yes.
vibration of sorts, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different tone.
Yeah.
And what it expresses, unity,
Yes.
one.
Right, yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, yeah,
And when people get into harmony at the end.
I mean.
Wow.
Really, almost a huge numbers of prayers you could be, like, I'm kind of offering this, and I've sort of said this already, but like as a sort of meta kavana of prayer in general, of like, thank you for the aliveness, or I'm feeling the aliveness, or I'm cultivating a sense of the aliveness, and that's sort of what the kavana, the intention that's then infusing, you know, right, I'm just turning to Psalm 95, you know, Lachuna Ranana, Ladonai, let's sing out, you know, like sing out, like, it's such an amazing thing to be an alive, existing being. So it goes with a lot of prayer, but there is a more specific prayer that we are really using, very directly using this language. And you've done it, and you've all probably done it, or you've certainly been directed to do it by the rabbi. But you've probably done it. Okay, what?
Turn towards the direction to.
What, the Shabbat bride?
And that one.
To let in the Shabbat bride? No, okay, all right, I'm just,
Instruction is.
so page 94 and 95.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's not just the Amidah, but it's the second blessing of the Amidah.
Divine power.
Well, yeah, although it's focusing on a particular quality of divine power, a number of different qualities, but the one I want to lift up is actually mentioned several times. So I think for the sake of time, I'm just gonna just show you. So we can just look at the in the English. So if you have the Siddur, I'm on 94. In loyalty, you sustain the living. Mechakel chayim, you sustain life. Chayim bechesed michaye kol chai berachamim rabim. You nurturing the life of every living thing. Right, that's and basically that is in your first text, in text number 1 on the page, you see this this one line thing, atam mechayeh et kulam, you enliven all things. So that is from, and this is cool because that's from the Bible. That's from the Tanakh. It's from the book of Nehemiah, which is not exactly like the book of the Bible that most of us probably can quote by chapter and verse, but it's you know, Nehemiah, I forget if I think he's like addressing God. And he's like saying, you atam mechayeh et kulam, you enliven all things. And so Reconstructionism basically put that into this blessing, because the traditional blessing talks about God as the reviver of the dead, which Mechaye Meitim instead of Mechaye Kol Chai, which the Reconstructionist movement had theological problems with, because it can be kind of taken, or has been taken kind of literally in many traditional Jewish circles and so forth. And so this is the reconstructed prayer that they just focused then on this life-giving, you are the enlivener of all things, quality, and then it goes on to talk about, other divine qualities, upholding those who fall, healing the sick, freeing the captive, so on and so forth. But then they had the close of the blessing, the last words, blessed are you, the fount of life, who gives and renews life. Baruch atah Hashem mechaye kol chai. It's almost the direct language from Nehemiah. And so this is right where we're really invoking this quality in the Siddur and connecting to it. And this Nehemiah quote is also beloved. It's also quite regularly quoted by the Hasidim when they talk about this divine, vivifying, enlivening power of existence. This will be one of their go-to biblical proof texts, because this is a different kind of, this is not exactly the theology of the Bible, right, that we're talking about, but it's kind of there a little bit in the Bible, and so they can then reach out for this, grab this Nehemiah text, and then like they've got kind of a biblical connection of sorts, and it does make the connection through the generations, or the flows of Jewish civilization and history. Okay, so that's a bunch of different stuff. Thoughts, questions, reactions, responses to all this. Part of the reason I offer this is I think that this actually is a really, for me, and I think, if you don't have a lot of struggle, if you're one of the rare liberal Jews who doesn't have a lot of theological struggles, like Geg is into hate, like, but most of us do, and I feel like this is one of the, and I'd love to hear from you if you agree or disagree, but I feel like this mode of relating to God, or this way of thinking about divinity, is a great way in. It's a non-supernaturalist, right, to kind of connect back up to Reconstructionist theology from a couple weeks ago. It's a very non-supernaturalist way of conceptualizing, relating to, and experiencing God. So
I think number 4 really sums that up.
Yeah, that's a whole, we're gonna go to number 4, but let's not, that's kind of a text that needs a little more unpacking, but
Okay.
but I'm glad that I want to hear more from you about that when we go through it, because that's another, it adds a few other layers to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But like,
It resonates a lot more with me than pretty much any other theology, I guess, in terms of that connectivity and aliveness and that sort of the thing that we all are, and also that we're exchanging with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very profound,
yeah,
and also physics, so it
yeah,
feels to me on that level too.
exchanging with
Matter
each
and-
other,
yeah.
with our breath, and
Yeah.
but and this is like why, like, the power of a minion as well, like, to
Yeah.
just come back, like, I mean, we're really, it's a much deeper level, when you're sitting in a board meeting or whatever, or a work meeting, a committee. I'm sure you're on a lot of committee meetings, right? You're exchanging breath and energy, right? But it's a whole other level of exchange when we're doing it
Yeah.
in prayer, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's just another heightened, I don't know what, but it's on the same
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I mean, it's the divine is everywhere and it's
Right.
all of us, and it doesn't matter whether we're in a committee meeting or whether we're doing the Shema. But still, it's just scales, right? It's not
Right.
difference, it's just a different intensity of the same
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully. And the point, and this, right, I wanna make connections to prayer when we can, cause you guys are like leading a prayer service and so far, then we're gonna be talking about, but like, hopefully. Prayer is nourishing, right, and, if not, powerful or meaningful, but like kind of more than, meaningful sometimes can just be like on the mental level, which is all really good, but like there's deeper levels than just that, but like the nourishing quality in a way through that energy exchange and building together. This is partly why we, as the clergy team at OC Shalom, Shelley knows this. She's had to deal with the clergy who really like, would you stop going on about like, moving closer and like having fewer seats in the sanctuary, because it affects
Yeah.
the energy that we're trying to build together and nourish each other with and celebrate. And it's why our tradition says something happens when you get a minimum of 10 people present, and the language that we say that comes from the early rabbis is like, then the Shekhinah is present when you have 10, right? The divine presence is then there, but there's something that happens when you get a group of people together. So thank you for, this prompted a lot of.
I think Dan wanted to say something.
Oh, cool. Oh, right, because you can see them too. I was like, how do you know Dan wanted to say something? You're behind me too. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, it's interesting as I'm always struggling with the theological and spiritual questions, like you said. This sounds like a non-theological energy aliveness. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Why does it have to be a theology? Why can't it just be an alive feeling in you that feels connected and joyful? And
Because I say so. No.
exactly. No,
Because it doesn't. I completely empower you to just have it be an alive, connected feeling. That is within you and flowing between you and others.
I
We're
mean,
studying theology right now.
Right.
I can label it, as divine and holy because it is so connecting, relational. It connects deep inside with the outside world. It's not just inside me and my imagination. I can label it that way, and it doesn't mean I have to have an actual image of what God as an entity or so is. I don't have to define that because it's the connection. It's the experience and the feeling that is the divinity. If we
Yeah.
use that word, that's where I'm kind of circling back around to.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so, yeah,
And honestly, Dan, I mean, I think that's what the Hasidim are. The Hasidim are. I mean, they're within a theological. It's theological because it's a theological tradition, and like it's very theologically oriented tradition, but they're trying to express through language to capture this connection, interconnectedness, aliveness, alive energy, or and they're it's all comes down to, what do we mean by Yud Hey Vav Hey, right? What do we mean, right? And to come back to, for the Adult B'nai Mitzvah class, to come back to our original biblical class, right? With working with the Yud Hey Vav Hey, right? Which is this, it's beingness, right? Kind of aliveness is sort of a subset of that whole, it's a flow, it's a process, it's not an image, right? Like, what's the image of aliveness? That, you'll see on here, I'm translating things as it, like, I still see people, like, do people talk about God as him in the context of aliveness? This aliveness has like masculine, it becomes sort of silly. Right? Like, this is not so another way of saying, Dan, is this is kind of like non-personal God language, right? Like, a lot of the personal God language has to do more with imagery and all the different. I mean, I guess this is still kind of a metaphor, but more of the imagery language that we also use throughout Judaism in the Siddur, but this is kind of less, this is not very personal.
By personal, you mean anthropomorphic?
I guess maybe, yeah, or maybe anthropomorphic is better. Yeah, or this is a kind of non-anthropomorphic. Maybe that's, I think you're right. I think that's maybe a better way of saying this is kind of non-anthropomorphic God language of like, what does Hasidim mean by Yud Hey Vav Hey, right?
Yeah. I like the idea using the, in a sense, better translation of it as being, like you just said, beingness, life energy, and I can even translate that into evolution.
Yes.
A flow of life over time moving towards something,
Yes.
whether you want to call it the messianic age or just more beautiful, more complexity, more whatever, all of that. And that I can wrap my head around without using the word God. And, that's just me not using, I mean, we've had this discussion many times.
I don't think we're gonna get to it today, but just, Dan, make sure you read text 5. But we're not gonna read it now. Now everyone's gonna read it. I don't know, I don't think we're gonna get there, but I think it's because it's raising the whole, like, it's the God, the word God is it's derived from the languages of pagan North Europe. Like, it's a misleading English term. But, and I did just want to say, though, Dan, that it's not translating God as being. It's actually, I mean, that's actually that's God's name. I mean, it's not like translating it.
Yeah.
That's really,
I agree. Yeah.
That's really the name. And so, yeah, all of this is different. Being itself it is very abstract. It can be very abstract. That's why I kind of like aliveness as a way in. It's a little less abstract because it's alive. There's a palpable quality to it, right? That starts to like give us a little bit of a, yeah, what?
Oh, I said,
Yeah, a little experience,
Just as action, it's movement, more like that we were talking.
Yeah, it's not static.
God is a verb.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
And I think the term God from the languages of pagan Northern Europe is more of the God as a thing, a direct object, and it's not a direct object, it's a verb.
Right, yeah, it's a verb, it's a process, it's a, yeah, exactly, and that's why, but we're that, when we start talking in English, that's the word we use, and that is triggering and so forth, and so this is trying to give some traditional language around that. Okay. Great. And let's do text
They
for.
wrote something in the chat.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah, that's right, exactly. Do you believe in, yeah, right, and then
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different assumptions.
He
That are in that kind of, and he said, is why I hate the question, do you believe in God? Like,
Yeah,
And-
it's a loaded question with a
oh,
and
right, I
it
mean,
can't be answered in a sense for
well,
any of what you're talking about, really.
which our has
Tatsita didn't ask you that question, it just
Yeah.
assumed.
Yeah, because I don't think we're gonna get to Art's text, but it's more straightforward, because the next, I wanna keep soaking you a little bit in the traditional language, because I think it's really wonderful, and it's great to be able to connect to how this was given language, but your point, Dan, is also there in that text, 5. Okay, so number 4 here, I'm gonna read it because it needs to be unpacked a little bit. So this is it's an anonymous text. Probably the best thing we could say is from the school of the Baal Shem Tov. It's an early Hasidic text. And yeah. Okay, so and this is yeah, it's a kind of like a practice instruction of like how to that the Baal Shem Tov or someone or one of the other Hasidic rabbis would give to their probably closer followers. This is probably not like the kind of thing they would just share with your average woodcutters, like simple Jew people, but the people who are really trying to cultivate this relationship with Yud He Vav He, with with beingness, they give this kind of teaching. So it's a great advantage when a person continually contemplates in their heart that they're in the presence of the blessed Creator, that it is surrounding them on all sides. It's kind of like a reminder, almost like a visualization. One should be so attached, and this is like that word devekut that I used in the beginning. This is the same root. The word he's using for attached is related to that word. That one shouldn't need to resettle oneself or remind oneself continually that they're in the presence of the Blessed One. Only that one should behold the blessed Creator within one's consciousness, within one's mind. You could say as well, the ayin haseichel, with the mind's eye, and realize that it is the place of the world. This is a rabbinic saying about from the early rabbis that God is the makom, the place of the world. So the text is doing a little bit of a reconnecting back to earlier rabbinic theology, but bringing that into this kind of this non-dual or pantheistic or I don't want to get into those words. This kind of theology that we're talking about, let's just say, but that God is the place of the world, i.e., that the world is existing within God, is what that is alluding to, which he then clarifies. That is to say that divinity existed before the world was created, and the world exists within the blessed Creator. So through this view, or through really internalizing this, a person will merit that the obscuring forces that are known as the klipot or shells, that which kind of obscures the divine presence, that will depart from them, because those forces create darkness and separation between the blessed, between God, between the Blessed One and the person, blocking one's consciousness from being able to perceive the presence. And this is kind of, this would, you would then kind of need to do more contemplative practice to start to work with this. Like you kind of need to do a meditative practice to start to see that we can't do this now, but I would say like to begin to see and feel that presence of beingness that is within us deeper than our minds and so forth. That's what I think that he's talking about, being able to perceive that presence. But then he kind of goes back to like this contemplative advice in the last paragraph, that one should contemplate that the blessed creator is the Ein Sof. This is a Kabbalistic name of God, which means without end, the infinite, encompassing all the worlds with its divine energy. This is another word than chayut, somewhat interchangeable, called shefa, the divine flow of energy from above to below, right? Above to below through various channels in all of the different worlds. And that's what a lot of Kabbalah is about, is naming and working with, and how does that energy flow, and the whole system of the Sfirot, which we're not going to do anything about, but if you know about the Sfirot, that's what that's about in a way. And then I love that this is like probably my favorite line in the whole thing. And this is also like, I don't know of a line quite this radical in previous Jewish theology. This is kind of where he really, scholars debate about how much Hasidism is really, Hasidic theology and Hasidism is really new, or if it's a lot of it is there in earlier medieval stuff. This is a little bit new. Just, we are always walking within the blessed creator. Like, this is not he wants you to really be clear, this is not a bearded guy on the throne. Right? We are walking within, or we could say swimming within, or whatever. Like, we're, our individuated being, right? Because that's the whole mystery, is that each of us, we're not like blobs within, we don't just disappear into being. We each have this, we and all the others, multiplicity of the world, from inanimate objects to animate ones, they are also these individuated beings, but through the whole mystery of the divine flow of energy, we continue as individuated beings with souls and particular things that are particular to us, but we're all walking within that. All of creation, brings us back to our first text of like,
I think it's saying God is within us. And we're within God.
And we're within God.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. It's both. It's like within and
What is Shefa again?
Is divine. It's another word for divine energy. It literally means flow. But it's in Hasidic thought, it's used as a kind of a synonym for chayut. There's not like a real technical difference, but it comes from the word, instead, it's cool though, right? Instead of coming from the word life, which chayut comes from, it comes from the word flow, right? So, but obviously you can see the connection.
If Tiana was here, that's your dog's name is Shefa.
Yeah. Right, so,
They don't know who wrote that.
no, it's anonymous. Yeah, they didn't. It's one of the early. Yeah, it's a school of Baal Shem Tov. Some people might attribute it. It could have been the Baal Shem. It could have been the Baal Shem Tov, but we don't really know.
The first paragraph of this number 4 kind of, it reminds me of the whole, simplifying this a lot. It reminds me of the whole, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You can't have one without the other, the feeling of the creator, of being created, by what, by whom, you can't have one without the other, and it just made me think of that whole chicken and egg conundrum that, you know, it's all around us. You need one in order to have the other. You need a feeling to be created. You need the creator to have that feeling of aliveness.
Yeah, and the way that is also languaged theologically in the tradition, both in Chassidut, but also even in the early rabbis, is like the creation is an ongoing process. It's a continuous, we're each, you know, through swimming and through walking within this energetic process, you know, the creation is always unfolding. And this is, and to bring this back to prayer, that celebrating that ongoing process of creation is what we do in well, in many places in prayer, but like directly in Baruch Shamar, right? If you know that prayer, which we usually do, it's 177, right? Because so this is where this theology shows up in our Siddur, and this is why someone like me can get excited about praying the same words over every day, because or you know, I don't necessarily do this absolutely every day, but certainly multiple times a week. I've prayed this prayer hundreds of times in my observant life. But it's saying, right, Baruch Shamar v'haya olam, blessed is the one who spoke and the world became. So there it's kind of past tense, but then in the next line, Baruch Oseh Bereshit, blessed is the one who does creation. And then the next, Baruch Omer V'oseh, blessed is the one who speaks and does. And that was really why I wanted, that was one of the reasons I wanted, you know, that shorter, the text from number 3, right? That is where he's saying, if we were able to see, that's the breath of its mouth, that's the divine speech, right? In that text 3. But here is, but where he's pulling that from is this older rabbinic and even biblical theology of divine speech, but the speech is continuous. The creation is still happening. And so here in this prayer, we're invited to, I love doing this outside, but again, we're like, where I can like see creation literally unfolding in front of my eyes, and you know, sometimes it's different from one day to the next. And then you know, and then there's this other like 2 line, the last line, Baruch Mirachem al Haaretz, right? Blessed is the one who's, I don't like the translation's not so great. I blessed is the one who is compassionate towards the earth, like God's beingness and this unfolding energy that's continually giving aliveness and being to everything is the expression of compassion, that there is being, that there is existence, you know, that we get our food, that the squirrel gets its food, that the bees get their food, right? That's all, that the process of life is unfolding, right? This is kind of that's, you know, that's how I would like translate into simpler contemporary language, or for Dan, like the process of life. This prayer is like celebrating the process of life unfolding, right? From birth, you know, from the peak experiences of birth, but like through our children growing from moment to moment is this same, you know, is the same celebrating that. So these are not, so I just want people to know that these ideas are not somehow far removed from the Judaism that we inhabit at Osei and at almost any other synagogue. It's right here. If you look at it with a certain kind of eyes. So I want to give us time for reflection. I want to end at 9, but are there and we're not going to get to text 5, but are there other comments, reactions? And it's a lot. I don't know if this is like a lot or and I would love if they're like, well, how does it work with, how do you understand X theologically in this kind of theology, right? Questions like that would be great too. But whatever, or whatever else however else you're responding to this, or what this stirs in you, or and Zoom folks as well, of course. Let's just see if we can get someone who hasn't spoken yet. But I'm not. Hey, spoke. Any new folks? Does this like seem? Does this just seem totally far out there? It's just like, oh yeah, okay, that's pretty much what I always thought. I just hadn't really looked at that prayer that way. That's interesting, Rabbi Josh. Okay, Paula. All right.
I really like reading number 3. And to me, this connection and all, this speaks of oneness. And
Yeah.
that is very Jewish idea, and it's our sort of godly idea of oneness, really, of creation, and how we're so connected. We're all connected in the oneness of creation, and I think that's sort of a pretty radical idea, especially nowadays. I think we could use some more of that kind of thought. I like number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because the oneness, particularly in the sense of one creating energy that we're all a part of and exchanging, we're all an expression of it in this theology, right? Even the really ignorant and deluded, and even the expressions of it that are really hurting other people. And I think that this does what this view does, and what Paul is talking about, and why it when it's internalized, it does bring a greater sense of compassion, because the otherness is, fades away. I mean, sometimes when you're really riled up and you're really triggered, you lose it. I'm just speaking personally, right? But then but then you can like resettle and reconnect to this understanding. But you're totally right that it's another way of giving language to this idea of oneness, and what that, and how they understand the divine oneness. Of course, like, that, this all goes far beyond, the divinity in this idea goes far, there's whole levels beyond all of this aliveness and so forth. But the aliveness is like one part of the iceberg, I guess, the divine iceberg in a way. Okay, well.
Dan had a comment.
Oh, yeah,
I couldn't read it.
I
saw it.
Thanks. Right, yeah, when we start talking about the creator, but again, I mean, this is the ongoing argument that Dan and I have only been having pretty much the entire time I've been the rabbi here. And that it's the problem of the creator language suggests more of an entity and duality. Yeah. It's a whole other thing that,
Duality meaning the creator and us.
Yeah, right. right, that's the classic thing,
Yeah.
right? Right, is there's a dual, there's, you know, there's the creator and
Yeah.
creation, and they're
Yeah.
two different things or separate things. One of the metaphors that they like to use a lot in early Hasidic texts about this, to give, so people don't fall into this duality, even though they'll use the creator language, they'll say the relationship of God and creation is like the snail whose shell is a part of its body. Right? The shell, like the deep, or it's like the deep structure is the snail, but the shell comes out of the snail. The shell isn't something that the snail picked up at Walmart or whatever. The snail made the shell, like it emanated, it came from its body. There's no separation.
Okay.
That's what they mean. Like by
Okay.
that's what all of this, that's the kind of radical theology of sorts that they're trying to articulate and awaken people into. Yeah, Dan.
Sorry. No, it's where I'm starting to realize myself that thinking about these questions of duality, creation, even the you, when we talk about bless you, bless God, things like this, that muddles the aliveness and the life energy that that we're talking about earlier. And that I have no idea who created or when anything was created. And I guess the question to me is, it doesn't matter. We're here now, and I can experience the aliveness, the energy. I can think about it as divine in terms of it has a flow and a life of its own that's moving forward towards something good, an evolutionary force. And I can stop asking myself these questions that just end up muddling my mind.
Yeah, or you can just retranslate it, when you see creator, you just plug in any one of the different things you were just saying. And by the way, that's what the Hasidim are doing, right? That's why they're trying to explain all this, because they want us to know that they don't just mean like, the kind of conventional dualistic thing of by using, even though they still use that language, but they're explaining kind of what they mean. Okay, so I think we'll hold here if people want to hang out. Those who have been in the Adult B'nai Mitzvah class, we've been trying to build in time for people to do some journaling reflection after each class, to notice what's stirring, what ideas spoke to them, or phrases, or how they're feeling, or sort of to process all of the different ideas. So I'm going to end the Zoom, but thank you all for joining us on Zoom, and those of us, if you need to duck out, I understand.
Yeah.
But okay, good night.